Thank you so much for showing up tonight, and it's just an honor to be here. As John said, I just left the set of a Hollywood movie, and I wish you could know how much more excited I am to share what God's done in my life with you guys tonight than I am to be there. They have to pay me to work on that movie, but not so here. I paid my way and gladly to come and speak with you guys tonight. And it's really a privilege and such an honor. My story starts at a pretty young age. I knew there was something wrong. It didn't take long. I was the only one that got the spankings and the beatings. My older brother and my older sister and my younger brother, they didn't seem to have those problems. I was the one, and always in trouble. And I knew, there seemed like something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I had an anxiousness inside of me, and I wouldn't figure that out for a long time, what it really was. And I tried a lot of things. The first thing I found that I just knew I was made for was motorcycles. I loved motorcycles, and I started riding them, and you know, they kind of kept me out of trouble, especially when I turned about 15. I started racing motocross, and that was great. It was a great outlet. I really focused on that, and I loved it more than anything. And I won actually three pro championships in California, and I thought, wow, here I go. I'm going to be world champ, and it looked good. I mean, I had the speed and the skill, and I was on my way. And then I started getting hurt, and it didn't take too long. Within a few years, I knew it was over. Both knees, both shoulders are completely destroyed, and it's a miracle I can even stand on this one leg. But anyways, God's in the miracle business, and I don't know what to do now. My whole life is motocross, and I'm like 21 years old, maybe, I forget. I know my life's over. And I was really upset, and I was mad at everything. I was mad at God, the world, my dad. I blamed everybody. And I started partying, and I kept clean. You know, I was an athlete. Motocross is difficult. I was really in good shape, and then I just went off and ruined everything. In my anger and my ignorance, and I had nothing to fall back on. I didn't have a relationship with God, and so I just went off the deep end and started partying and going to nightclubs and taking drugs and just going down the wrong road. And it didn't take too long. I got arrested and did a little time in LA County Jail, and so then I straightened out a little bit and thought, you know, this is no life. I got to do something. And so I thought, well, I'll do stunts. I have these skills in motocross. I can't race at the upper level, but I can surely do stunts, and which I started doing. And I had great success. I worked as a double for Rambo, the very first First Blood movie. I did the motorcycle chase scene in that, and did the A-Team movie, did my best stunt I ever did in that. Hopefully I brought enough books for everybody. You'll see it on the back of my book. Pretty big stunt. And anyways, everything looked good. I said, all right, here I go. And after about 3 or 4 years of that, I was in Birmingham, Alabama, doing a relatively easy stunt on a Mel Gibson movie. Had a baseball bat, and I was supposed to jump on top of this truck that was going about 5 miles an hour and break the windshield out of it, and then jump up on top of it and go to hit Mel with my bat and get thrown off. And then 6 stunt guys were running next to the truck to catch me when I came off backwards. And the extras got in the way, and I came off the top of that thing, and it was a 10-ton stake bed with 25 guys in the back of it. And only one guy got to me because my other guys got pushed out of the way. And so he fell towards the truck. I went under the truck, and I got the dual rears over my chest from here to here, and it sounded like dried twigs snapping. It was horrible. And I'm on my back and I can't move, I'm paralyzed, and everybody's screaming just with their hands over their mouth saying, oh God, just crying. They knew I was dead and I knew I was dead, but I kept breathing. And so finally I said to the stunt coordinator, who's my friend, I said, Alan, I'm not going to die. You got to call an ambulance. And he looked at me like he couldn't believe it. And so, yeah, and I didn't die. Here I am. So I was in bad shape, really bad. It broke just about everything from here to here, my neck, my ribs, my shoulder broke in half. Doctor said he'd never seen that big bone. Elbow came outside of my arm. So I was in bad shape, but I lived. And, it's funny. After I got well enough to go back on that movie set, I couldn't work, obviously. I kind of hobbled back on this. And two guys came up to me and said, hey, we want to talk to you. And they were real serious. And I was like, yeah, what? What's up? And they said, we saw you die. You were a dead man. And God kept you alive for a reason. And, I was such an idiot back then. I was going, yeah, he kept me alive for a reason. I'm going to go party and do this and that. And they just shook their heads like, nah, he kept you alive for a reason. And, it's funny, I forgot about that. But years later, like about 8 years ago, I remembered crystal clear what those guys said, because he really did have a plan for me. But I wouldn't figure that out for a long time and a lot of heartache. And so now I'm done in the stunts. I'm done doing anything where my body's going to get hurt. I'm so fragile at this point, and now I'm pretty disappointed in life. You can imagine 2 promising careers down the drain, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? And I still, that feeling was in me that I knew something, I was missing something. I remember winning those races in motocross and thinking if I won that championship, maybe I would feel better and that feeling would go away, and it never did. I remember the disappointment of winning my first pro championship and thinking, man, I thought it would be better. And then I won another one, and it wasn't. And so, in doing the big stunts, I thought I'd be famous. Well, that didn't mean anything. And now here I am, with nothing. So I thought, I need to make money. So I was good at construction. I used to do construction when I'd be broken up from motorcycle racing, and I just had a natural knack for it. So I go into the construction business, and boy, I did well. I made a lot of money, and I thought, wow, man, I'm getting a lot of money here. This is nice. And big construction company in Los Angeles, and I had a new wife, and I started racing go-karts actually and did well in that, and then I thought stock cars, so got a NASCAR stock car and won the championship at Saugus Speedway. It's not in business anymore. Cool. Yeah, Saugus was a neat place, and anyways, I won the late model championship there for 2 years, and yeah. So then I went to the Southwest Tour, the next level up, and about that time there was a darkness creeping into my life. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but nothing seemed to be going right. I didn't care for the way my wife and my life was going. She was so money hungry, and it really bothered me. Just the things that would come out of her mouth, and just anyways, I didn't like my life, and my racing was going downhill. The guys that I could easily beat before were beating me, and my older brother died suddenly at 40 years old, and I just could not figure out what was wrong. And I started drinking more and more, and the next thing I know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he had a crack cocaine problem, and I was telling him, you're an idiot, why are you doing that stuff? We know it's bad news. And he was telling me why he was doing it, and I'm sitting there drinking my drinks, and I get stupid enough on the alcohol. I said, you know what, give me that pipe, and I started smoking crack with him, and I just went like this. And for about 10 years, I just was on this ride that I couldn't get off of, just so addicted to crack and drinking, and I'd try and start over. I'd swear the stuff off, and I would come back to it every time I had a problem. And it was just a horrible thing. I lost my wife, and my house, my dream house that I'd built, 2 NASCAR stock cars, a hauler, an ocean racing boat, and everything else. It was all gone from crack cocaine. And the sad thing is I didn't even care. And so I went in that condition, and I kept saying, man, Will, come on, you got to get it together, you know, and I couldn't. There was something, I had no power. There was nothing in me to overcome. I'd try like a 12-step program or this or that, but if something went wrong, I was just one bad day away from using. Well, meanwhile, I met a girl, and the harder I tried to tell her what a loser I was, I don't know, the more she seemed to love me. She needed a loser to hang with. And so we started partying together, and next thing I know, we're having kids, and we have 3 kids. And we're always moving away from the police because we were always buying and selling drugs to pay for our drug habit. So we go from LA to Hawaii to North Carolina. I got a job for Richard Petty driving experience. I was going to start over and get clean. And then from North Carolina, they start a new driving experience in Las Vegas. I start driving there. Next thing I know, I find these guys that are crack dealers, and I'm smoking crack there, and I spend 2 years there. Then it's time to leave that place. I got fired from the Richard Petty driving experience and back to Hawaii, and then to Kansas. Oh, sorry. One of the worst things happened in my life. Our 4th child, my wife accidentally suffocated him, breastfeeding him. She fell asleep, and he was 6 days old. And I thought I'd had some bad things happen in my life, but I was not prepared for that. That was about here, and everything was here. And I was either crying or I was high for about a year. And I looked at my wife, and I knew she was going to die because she was so guilty for what had happened. And it was just horrific. And again, we had no help. We had no relationship with God, nothing. And so we moved to Kansas, where her family is. And we're going to start over, and we're just going to do it on our own strength. Big mistake. It is amazing. We move into this house, and it's right on the edge of the biggest crack neighborhood I've ever seen in my life. It's the ghetto there. And so we're doing that again. Next thing I know, her mom legally has our 3 children taken away from us. And the next thing I know, my wife gets pregnant again. And I said, that's it. We are leaving. My mom lives in Montana now. I'm going to go to Montana. And she lives in Hamilton, or did. And so we moved to Montana. We had nothing. But she was pregnant, and we were going to start over. And we actually did pretty well for a long time. And this was little Will number 2. And he's beautiful, and everything is going pretty good. And we got cars again, and we have money again, and not a lot, but we're doing all right. And she comes home from the market one day and says, hey, I met some people. They do meth. You want to party? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I was bored by then. And so we start doing that. Well, in a little town in Montana, it doesn't take long. And next thing I know, she's arrested, and they are looking for me. And it's bad. They think we're the biggest dope dealers ever hit Montana. And it's not good. They have her for criminal distribution of methamphetamine. It's a 100-year maximum sentence with a $100,000 fine. And they're looking for me for the same thing. They have my baby. He's only 9 months old, little Will. And I don't know what to do. And I'm driving around with this friend of ours, and for about a week, wondering what to do. And one day we're driving down Dutch Hill in Hamilton, and all of a sudden, in my mind, it's like I'm watching a videotape of me getting arrested exactly where we're going at the Woodside Market to get gas, because we're running out of gas. And it's right up ahead of, about a mile or 2. And I just tell the girl, I say, hey, you got to pull over and let me out. I'm going to get arrested if I go there. And she looks at me like, how do you know that? She thinks I'm crazy. And I said, I'm seeing it in my head, crystal clear. It's going to happen. And so she goes, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, let me out. And I just got, it was like the darkest, scariest thing went through me right at that moment. I said, never mind, don't let me out. Take me to Woodside Market. If I get arrested how I told you, that's God's answer for me. Now, I didn't know what that meant at the time. I was surprised I even said that. But God was orchestrating something that day, because when I got there, it happened just how he had showed me. And I was like blown away. And you know, when I'm getting arrested just how I'd seen, I'm really at peace. And I don't know, not all of you have been arrested, but for those of you that have, and when you know it's bad, there's no peace. You're really anxious. You're about ready to have a nervous breakdown. And I was just watching, going, it was almost like a dream. I'm watching it unfold. And so I said, well, okay, God, I always believed in God, but I said, I think you're a little more personal than I ever believed, because this is very personal. I mean, he showed me and it happened, and I'm saying, what do you want me to do? And I didn't hear anything. I didn't, you know, so okay. So I go to jail, and I got the big charge, $100,000 bail, and I'm sitting there stuck. There's no way out. And my lawyer keeps telling me, he goes, Will, he goes, I usually can make really good deals in this county, but I can't make a deal for you. They are going to make you a poster boy and of why you don't do meth in Montana. And they're going to go for the full 100 on you. And I was sitting there going, wow, all right. Well, through that time, sitting there in that jail, I kept knowing that I should read a Bible. Now, I'd never read a Bible. And I grew up in Los Angeles on kind of New Age stuff, and I'd always kind of been taught that the Bible was not right, and you know, it just wasn't worth reading. And with evolution and everything else, I've been brainwashed in school about. And so I just knew I was supposed to read it, and I just kept reading it. And after a few months of that, and my lawyer kept telling me, I don't understand it. I can't make you a deal. All of a sudden, one day, I was reading about Jesus getting crucified, and I remember it was right when I read the centurion said, truly, this was the Son of God. It was the innocent man. And right at that moment, I just burst into tears, and I understood for the first time in my life what all these crazy Christians were all excited about. I got it. Yeah. And that moment changed my life forever. It's been 8 years. Yes, it's just an amazing thing he did that day. And here's the cool thing. Well, I'll tell you, I got done crying. I've never cried so hard in my life. The tears were flowing off the table. Thank God all the guys had gone back to bed after breakfast, and I was out there alone, because it's kind of a bummer to be crying like that in front of a bunch of criminals, you know, and I get done, and I'm just kind of looking at those tears, and I tell people I was baptized in my own tears. But yeah, and all of a sudden, I pick up a pencil and I start writing, and next thing I know, there's this poem sitting there, and that's pretty weird for me, because I don't like writing. I don't like writing a simple letter. When I have a pen and paper, I'm uncomfortable, and I can't wait to get it out of my hands. But there's no doubt, here's this poem, and I'm thinking, well, you know, actually that's pretty good. And I'm pretty critical of anything I do, so for me to say that, it had to be decent. So anyways, these poems keep coming, and I am a changed person. It's amazing, the difference. The next thing I know, my lawyer comes in, and for 3 or 4 months he'd been saying, I don't know what's going on. Well, now he comes in and says, hey, I don't know what's going on, but they want to make a deal. And I said, well, I know what's going on. I got saved, and God's doing that. And he went, really? Okay, well, whatever. You know, but I knew, because that same judge that I had gone to, and I asked him to lower my bail before I got saved, and I wasn't right with God at that point. I had a lot of unforgiveness in my heart and a lot of other problems that he had to deal with first, even before I got saved. But as soon as I was right with God, he took that same judge that denied my bail, and I was allowed to leave that jail, walk out OR on my own recognizance, no money, and go to this place called Isaac's house. And I got to go there, and it's an incredible place. It's the pastor, James Landis, and his wife Kate. They run this place, and he's the pastor that comes into the jail on Monday nights. And I got to go there and learn how to live life using biblical principles. And yes, it's an awesome place, and it was an awesome time. But I did break the law, and there was still, I had to stand in front of that judge. And so I went back after about 3 months, and you know, God had kind of showed me that I'd be going to prison. I was hoping I could stay at Isaac's house because I was doing so well there. And everybody testified that I was, and it was going to be great. But I knew. I said, you know, God, I know you're showing me I'm going to be going to prison. And that judge, he went crazy. I was just like, wow, look at him go. He just accused me of doing things I hadn't even done. It wasn't even in the record, but he, you know, he gave me 20 years with 10 suspended. And I just said, all right, you know, I'm excited about going to prison, seeing what you're going to do there, God. And, you know, that's an amazing thing. I mean, I'm a free bird. To go to prison, you know, it was 20 years with 10 suspended. That means for sure I was doing 2.5 years minimum. And it didn't matter. I was okay. And only God can give you that kind of peace. And I've noticed that he gives me peace through any trial since that day. But anyways, the first thing I did, I got in the jail and, oh, wow, I feel like a poem. And I start writing. I can always tell, you know, because I don't write them on my own. It's when God says write them, I write them. And I write this poem called 10 Years. And it always cracks me up when I read it because it just is so lighthearted about going to prison for 10 years, you know. And it just, only God can do that. He can give you peace through any trial. So here I am going to prison, and everything's great. I'm writing poems. I'm reading the Bible constantly, praying with people. And it was an amazing time. And I was only behind bars for about, what was it, a year and a half. And I found out that there's a provision that 13 months before you're parole eligible, you can go to a pre-release center as a prison, an inmate worker. And I thought, wow, I'm there, you know. So I went to the parole hearing and told them what I wanted to do. And I'll tell you, if you've ever been in a parole hearing, they're pretty rough on you. Well, when I went in there, God totally tuned this guy's heart up. And he's shaking my hand, how you doing, Mr. Harper? And he's really polite. And the lady, there's two of them, the lady keeps looking at him like, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? You know, and he's so nice, and he's going to get me out of prison. And he did. And God was the one that really did that work that day, because there's no way I should have been allowed out. I had other charges, and he even asked me about them. And then it was just like he kind of went dizzy and set those away, and he told the lady, how are we going to get this guy out of prison? She said, well, we can't. He's got to do his treatment in prison. And he said, no. He goes, we can send him to corrections. And she's going, well, we don't do that. He goes, well, it's not against the law. And she said, it was funny. They were arguing. She didn't want me out, and he did. And he won. And so, yeah, God, when God's going to do something, it doesn't matter. He takes the heart of the judge and flows it whichever way he wants, like a channel of water. And I've seen it, and he can. And so the next thing I know, I'm on my way to treatment and on to Missoula pre-release. And yes, and so now I'm at the pre-release center as an inmate worker making $6 a day. But I'm living in a nice place. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it is a beautiful place, and it's awesome, except the staff there is really, they're known as the toughest, and it's the hardest place to get through. But again, since I'm now allow God to be Lord in my life, that Jesus is my Lord, I don't worry about that. I just say, I'm okay. I'm going to just be a good example of what you do in a man. And so when they'd yell or treat me unfair, I'd just smile and say, okay, yeah, well, I'm good. And they never got to me. And that's so on me. I'm the kind of guy that would gladly go back to prison over being right. You know, they can't treat me that way. And I would have gone back to prison, my old self. But the new me, I was like, yeah, no problem. Well, it was amazing. I became friends with all of them, and I had a pretty amazing relationship. And again, that's God. And so now I've done my 6 months as an inmate worker, $6 a day. I've managed to save $1,000 of at $6 a day. I've never been able to save anything, and I didn't care how much money I was making. I was going to buy something before I even had the money. Well, God changes that too. He'll put that ability to just kind of wait. And so it's time to become a worker, a regular, not an inmate worker, but a regular resident at the pre-release center. And so I become a resident there. Now, you have to realize, I'm still 6 months away from being parole eligible. I'm not allowed really out in the public. I have a ID that says inmate across it, Montana State Prison. I don't have a driver's license, nothing. That's all I have. And I am an inmate. So I'm going to work. I get a great job. I'm making over $1,000 a week doing finished carpentry inside, out of the cold because it was winter. And it was just an amazing time. Oh, the lady I worked for on this apartment building, I lived there when I got out of the center. She actually still to this day keeps a room for me. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. When I became a resident, it takes about 6 months usually to go through that. In 89 days, I graduated and was on the Live Out program, and that was kind of unheard of. And so now I'm living in this luxury apartment building in Missoula, Montana. And I remember I still have 2 months to go before I'm legally parole eligible to be on my own. But I'm on my own. And only God can do that. And I'm sitting there, and I was cooking some really nice steaks and having this beautiful dinner, and I saw my inmate ID sitting there. And I remember looking at that and saying, you know, Lord, only you can pull this off. I'm an inmate in the Montana State Prison for 2 more months, but I'm living in luxury. I mean, really, I was living in a nice place, making good money, and I just had to laugh that, you know, God is able to do anything, more than we can even imagine. And so I graduated, you know, the Live Out, and now I'm actually 2.5 years into my 10-year sentence. I'm on parole, regular parole. And I get a driver's license, and immediately I say, that's it, man, I'm going to start Harper Construction, and nothing's going to stop me now. I'm going to be so successful with God. You know, I know what I've been missing my whole life. I feel whole as a person, and I'm just excited. And then I always tell people, it's like God taps you on the shoulder and says, no, that's not what you're doing. It's like, what? He goes, go back to Isaac's house and help other people. Show them what I've done for you. And I'm like, all right. I am on parole, though, and I'm supposed to be making money. And it's like, do you trust me? I said, yes, Lord, I trust you. And so I went to Isaac's house, and I said, I'm back. I'm going to finish this program, and I want to be a part of it. You know, my probation officer, he never once hammered me about a job or money. Matter of fact, he was going through some personal problems, and when I'd go have a meeting with him every month, we would talk about his problems, and when we'd be done, he'd thank me and say, thank you. Yeah. So it was just an awesome time, and you know, by trusting God that way, he slowly has restored other things. After I was at Isaac's house for a while, I knew that he was going to open some other doors, and my brother, who wouldn't talk to me because of my addictions, and he just didn't want anything to do with me, he's straight as an arrow, and he's a super successful stunt coordinator in Hollywood, and he's the reason why I work on all these movies, because he does them. He's the stunt coordinator. And so he said, hey, you know, you want to come work for me? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So I worked on Iron Man 2, and then Cowboys and Aliens, and then last year I got to work on The Lone Ranger, but rather than being a stuntman, I was a stunt rigger. I got to work on it for 9 months, and that's really unheard of. So during that time, I gave away about probably 600 books and gave my testimony to people. And it's pretty amazing, you know, on a movie set, you don't really talk about God too much, or you might get fired. And I was telling people about God every day and giving my books away and giving testimony and telling them what God did in my life, and it was pretty awesome. So here I am. I just I praise God every day. My worst day now is better than my best day back in the day, and it's just a privilege to do the work that God has for me. It's how I start my day every day. I read my Bible, I pray, and I say, Lord, what would you have me do today? And it's amazing, the peace that he can give. And really, that hole in your heart that you can't figure out what life's about. I know what life's about now. It's to live in a way that's pleasing to God. And, people say, well, I kind of want to do what I want to do. You give up your life, and he gives you a better life, way better than you could ever hope for, more than you could ask or think. And so I really think that's probably about all I have for you guys tonight. It's just been awesome. I will answer questions for you guys out in the foyer afterwards and give away some books. Hopefully I have enough for everybody. If you're with a few people, if you could maybe just take one book and maybe share it until we see how many books, and if there's a few left over at the end, then go ahead and take an extra one. But for now, if you guys could share, I think I have about a little over 100 books that I brought, and they're free. God told me when I was trying to figure out how much to charge for them, he said, freely you were given, freely give. And he always provides the money to pay for them. And so, some people, though, they do demand to be a part of that blessing of supporting that ministry or Isaac's House. If you feel that, I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you about what Jesus does in a person and the hope. But if you do feel that, there's information in the back of the book, and you can do that. But that's up to you.
Thanks, Will.
Since writing this book in 2008, some major events have transpired, so I thought it was time to give you all an update. First, I would like to address some questions I've been asked about my wife, Heather, and our kids, Ben, Amy, Allie, and Willie. Before our arrest, Heather had divorced me thinking it would help her to get our kids back. Even though we were divorced, we still stayed together and eventually had our parental rights for Ben, Amy, and Allie severed due to our drug use. Heather's mom was awarded custody, and we moved to Montana when Heather became pregnant with Willie. After our arrest in Montana, 9-month-old Willie was adopted by my sister Jean in Maui. When Heather was released from prison, she went back to Kansas and was reunited with Ben, Amy, and Allie. Heather married a great guy and is doing well, working and raising our 3 oldest kids. We have a great relationship, and I just took Willie to Kansas to visit. He wants to go back for the summer and possibly longer. I have returned to stunt work thanks to my brother Tom, and have worked on Iron Man 2 and 3, NCIS Los Angeles, Dinner for Schmucks, Cowboys and Aliens, a commercial for Call of Duty, The Lone Ranger, and Captain America 2. I race motocross with the old timers and just got a NASCAR Super Late model that I will race and use as a platform for the Isaac's House ministry. That is all pretty exciting stuff, but I have to say that the most exciting and fulfilling thing I do now is give testimony about what God has done in my life. I speak in detention centers, rehabs, and churches, and love it more than anything I've ever done. The worst day working for God is better than the best day working in the world. I have been wanting to write this epilogue for quite a while, but I felt like God was going to do something big in my life, and I felt I should wait so I could include it. Due to my 20-year sentence, I was to be on parole until 2024. Today, I got the amazing news that I have been granted a conditional release from supervision. This has never been done in the state of Montana, ever. Praise God. For the eyes of the Lord search to and fro throughout the earth to strongly support those whose heart are completely His. 2 Chronicles 16:9. God saved me from a life of death and destruction. I have been clean and sober for over 8 years and continue to be amazed by the peace He brings to me. He gave me this poem recently as a memorial to what He has done in my life. It's called Out of Egypt. Out of Egypt I was called, my god Satan was appalled. I was a slave so many years, living in torment, drowning in tears. My slave driver, cruel and mean, pushing me hard, my bones so lean. Darkness so thick, cut with a knife, crying to God, please spare my life. He heard my cry in that dark night, sparing my life, sending his light. The angel of death passed over me. I am so grateful, I am so free. Walking in freedom, feeling God's hand, my destination, the promised land.